This is a short story that happened to me last year on my anniversary. We rented a beautiful house on Airbnb that had everything we could want. It was in the woods, but only about 100 yards away from a corner store. My husband would go on these long runs in the morning, and I would relax on the deck and read. One reason why we chose this place was that my husband had one day of work that he couldn't get off, but the company headquarters was only about 15 minutes away from the house we were renting. So, on the day that he had to work, I decided to go down to the local store and buy some stuff to make him a romantic dinner. Like I said, the store is literally 100 yards away from my house, at most. So, I left quickly, around 1, and I didn't lock the door. The house seemed to be in a really safe area, with hardly any crime. Trust me, I looked. And not to mention, the police station was right next to that corner store. I was going to be back in less than 10 minutes, so I didn't really think it was a big deal. So, I left and came back, and just because I had to wait in line, it took me 14 minutes. The rest of my afternoon was normal. I prepared dinner and got the table set with candles and everything. My afternoon was fairly normal and just like any other day. At about 4:30, I went to the bathroom, and I thought I could smell something funny, almost like cologne. My husband didn't wear cologne, but I didn't think too much about it. I just thought that maybe he was trying some out and went about my business. A little after 7, he came home from work. He greeted me with flowers and an amazing piece of cheesecake that I would be having for dessert. I was thrilled. He was so thankful for the dinner that I'd prepared for him. We had a lovely evening. After we ate, he said he was going to go wash up and meet me on the couch for a movie and some cheesecake. As he walked upstairs where the bathroom was, he stopped talking in mid-sentence and said in a voice that still haunts me, "What's that smell?" I came to the bottom of the stairs and asked if he could smell the cologne too. He did, and he immediately mouthed the words, "Call 911" to me. I went into the other room and called. I tried to whisper, not to alert the potential intruder. What my husband didn't tell me until later was that he saw muddy footprints on the bathroom floor, and the shower curtain was open with 2 dirty, wet footprints inside of the bathtub. Next to the bathroom was a spare room that we didn't use. The door was shut, and I know for a fact that we had left it open when we arrived. He grabbed the door slowly, and he tried to turn the handle, but it was being held from the other side. I'm not sure what got into him, but he kicked open the door, and to the horror of both of us was a small, dirty-looking man. He was dressed in all black, with brown work boots. My husband, who's only an average build, slammed him down with ease and pushed him against the wall. After only a few minutes, the police showed up and quickly ran upstairs. Luckily, nobody was hurt, and the intentions of this intruder were unknown. I was alone all afternoon with him, and he did nothing. I couldn't sleep that night. I remembered that this was probably all my fault. I always locked the door, and the one time I decided not to, this happened. I began to freak out that the man was in the shower right next to me when I was going to the bathroom. I'm just so thankful my husband didn't get hurt and that the police station is literally right around the corner. The worst part is, we never got any answers. We don't know why this man broke in, and I'm not sure we ever will. This happened a few months ago, right as the nice weather started coming in. Please bear with me because this is the first time I'm trying to actually put this strange night into words. So my girlfriend, our mutt Sophie, and I decided to rent this nice Airbnb cabin for a long weekend getaway. It was beautiful, nestled right in the woods with a view of the lake. Perfect place to unwind, well, so we thought. The first night was great. We barbecued, played cards, and had a couple of drinks. But I noticed something odd about Sophie. She's not the nervous type, but she seemed spooked. She wouldn't sleep. She just kept looking around and whining. This continued all night. And I joked with my girlfriend that the place was probably haunted, just to tease her. Well, I regretted that joke the next day. My girl, bless her heart, she took me seriously. We spent half the day on our phones, looking up the history of the property and trying to read about ghost hauntings. I didn't believe in ghosts, but all that reading started to really creep me out. Maybe I was just matching her energy, but regardless, I was feeling off. That night, we were a bit on edge, and Sophie really didn't help. She was acting even weirder, looking around, growling. I'm not gonna lie, it had me spooked as well. We decided to check around the cabin and see if we could spot whatever was freaking her out. Then, things took a turn for the surreal. We were heading up to the second floor. Our bedroom was on the first floor, so we hadn't even gone upstairs since we had arrived on the first day. When we got up the stairs is when Sophie started barking like crazy. Her hair was standing on end. We were half expecting to see that ghost, so imagine our shock when a wild-eyed woman bolted from one of the closets upstairs. She had this crazy hair and was wearing a faded, worn-out yellow dress, and she was barefoot. She was covered in dirt, like she'd been living in the woods. But the freakiest part was her laugh. She was howling and laughing as she bolted out of the cabin and into the woods. We had no cell service, so we jumped into the car and drove about a mile down the road before we could call the police and the property owner. We told them what happened, and then we just packed up and left. We didn't stick around to see what happened after. Honestly, I'm just glad that that woman didn't hurt us. I don't know what her story was or why she was in our cabin. But that experience, man, it was like living in a horror movie. The creepiest part to me was that this crazed woman must have snuck into the house at some point when we were already staying in the cabin. When we arrived, we walked through the entire cabin, and I looked in that very closet because that's where all the games were. It still freaks me out when I think about it. So I'm writing it all down, hoping it'll make sense somehow, or at least help me sleep. Who knows? All I can say is I won't be joking around about ghosts anytime soon. I'm not a writer by any stretch. I'm just an ordinary guy, a marketing executive who found himself in a smaller city for a business meeting. When I say smaller, I just mean it wasn't a massive city like Chicago or New York City. What happened to me during that trip is far from ordinary, and the story I'm about to share, I still can't fully comprehend. Since that night, my mind has raced frantically trying to understand what I heard. I rented an AIRBNB, a cozy city apartment with brick walls and that beautiful rustic charm. It was perfect for a weekend stay. The idea was to find a peaceful place where I could focus on my work when I wasn't in meetings. The first day went smoothly, and by the second day, I was already getting acquainted with the local bakery and the small parks around. But it was that second night when everything changed. I had just returned from a long day of negotiations and was looking forward to some quiet time. That's when I heard it. A low hum coming from the apartment next door. It was like a washing machine stuck on the spin cycle. It was annoying, but I brushed it off. As the evening grew darker, the hum grew louder, now accompanied by strange, chilling screams. I guess it's possible that it wasn't screams, but it sounded just like screams. They were guttural, not like anything I'd ever heard in person. I tried to convince myself it was just the TV next door, and I tried drowning it out with my headphones and listening to some soothing music. After a few hours of working, I finally took my headphones off, and to my relief, the noises had stopped. It was past midnight, and all I wanted was a good night's sleep. But the moment I switched off the lights and crawled into bed, the noises returned. They were louder, more intense, a whirling hum with those disturbing screams. It was clearly the sounds of screams now, and I couldn't ignore it. I could almost feel the vibrations through the walls. My heart was pounding in my chest. Something about the sounds filled me with dread. I decided to call the police, since the sounds were just too unsettling to be ignored any longer. They arrived within minutes, their flashing lights cutting through the darkness outside my window. Even 5 stories up, I could see their lights. Then I heard it. The sounds of a struggle next door, muffled shouts, a brief scuffle, and then nothing. Silence. That immediate silence was even more unsettling than the noises I had heard all night. The police didn't say anything about what they found. They just asked me a few questions, took down my details, and then they left. The silence in that apartment felt heavier after they left. It was a sleepless night. Every shadow made me jump, and every pipe creak made me get out of bed and walk around the apartment. The following day, I packed my things and left. I couldn't bear another night in that apartment, or in that city. Even now, months later, the memory of those sounds still haunt me. I don't know what happened next door that night, and part of me doesn't want to know. But I do know one thing. It left me feeling an overwhelming amount of dread. I know on the surface the story doesn't seem like much, but put yourself in my shoes. I truly thought someone was in trouble next door, or maybe even worse. Again, I'm not a writer, but I had to write this down, hoping it would help me deal with the fear, the nightmares, and maybe to remind myself that some things are just better left unknown.